Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to cover a topic: pre-qualifying leads, pre-qualification, scanning, screening, whatever you want to call it. Pre-qualifying is insanely powerful, arguably one of the most important processes you have in your entire business. And when it comes to scaling, when it comes to not wasting effort, we want to spend more time on actual deals. We don't want to keep walking properties. We don't want to keep wasting our efforts and doing quote unquote favors for sellers. So let's just dive right in. Pre-qualifying is a simple understanding of someone's situation or circumstances. It is understanding what they are going through and learning to actively listen to be able to recognize if certain criteria is met that creates deals. Now, you do this from time to time. Say you're buying a couch on Facebook Marketplace, and you want to know if what the features are. You want to know if the back cushions come off of it. You want to know what color it actually is. You might ask follow-up questions to try to pre-qualify, and then you're going to go into the price. You're going to say, hey, you're asking 500. I don't know if I could do that. I just think I'm more comfortable at 300. What you're doing, and you probably didn't even think about it like this, what you're doing is pre-qualifying that lead, that couch lead on Facebook Marketplace, because you have to make it make sense for you. Delivery, all these other features that go into buying a couch off Facebook Marketplace. So you've been pre-qualifying things your entire life, whether your friends are asking you to hang out, to go out at night, and you're trying to figure out what bar they're going to, and you're going to ask, tell me if this sounds familiar. Oh man, how many people are going to be there? Hey, is this one person going to be there? Who's driving home? Are we going to have to get an Uber? Are we going to have to get a taxi? All of these things, it's an equation of effort that come out of your thoughts and come out of your brain whenever you are trying to determine what you want to do in a situation. It's pre-qualifying. You've been doing it your whole life. You just need to apply it to real estate so you can be more intentional with your efforts and not waste time, not waste effort, not walk 100 properties without putting one under contract. And I promise I've seen people do it. So just tell me if that ever sounds like you. You walk a ton of properties, and it's somebody who is never going to do business. They were never going to sell a property for a discount. That is exactly what we're trying to figure out here. We're trying to figure out the circumstances. We're trying to figure out the pain, the motivation, all the stuff that goes into why somebody would do business with you as an investor, as a wholesaler, whatever. The learning curve on pre-qualifying leads, honestly, is really long if you don't have any guidance. You get in this mindset of, oh, I want to go walk a bunch of properties. I want to learn the process. And I'm all for that. Do all that. That is insane. You want to get comfortable with making offers. You want to get comfortable with the process, setting appointments, making offers, running repair numbers, budgets, all the stuff that goes into it, and doing follow-up calls, and all the stuff that goes into everything before pre-qualifying is sometimes learned by some investors that are just starting out. So there is a lot of value, however, in learning that. I promise you, I did it. Everybody gets their stripes, so to speak. They earn their stripes starting out and investing in their own way. It's going to happen naturally, however you conduct business, right? But what we want to do here is expedite the process. And what I recommend is shortening that learning curve on pre-qualification and getting comfortable by having some sort of mentor or coach around you when you're doing calls, you're setting appointments, you're driving for dollars, people who can steer you in the right direction, so you don't have as much wasted effort and you can feel more comfortable knowing there's somebody around you who has done this 1,000 or 100,000 times, and you don't have to feel weird about it. You don't have to think, oh man, I'm throwing away a deal that was potentially a deal because they told me they would sell for 85,000. It's worth 100, and that's already a discount. That's not good enough a lot of the times as an investor here. So that's just not good enough. What we want to do is pre-qualify them even harder, even deeper, even further, to figure out what they're willing to do, what they're willing to play ball at, and all the stuff that goes into negotiating a deal. And just so there's no wasted effort. And I always say this: as long as you're learning, there is no wasted effort. I don't want people to get all weird and get all frustrated at themselves because they haven't been able to. They've been walking 100 properties, or they walked 10 houses last week, and none of them ended up even being close to working out. That's okay. That happens. That still happens to us in our business, because you can't always, things move fast. You can't always pre-qualify on every single level of motivation that I'm about to dive into right now. There's really only 4 main levels. So like I said, there's really 4 main levels, 4 main questions you need to know that need to be answered as an investor to pre-qualify a lead to a depth that makes sense. So I bet you thought, honestly, this was going to be harder. So if you ask them, and you ask these questions in a certain order on purpose, we don't want to be afraid to ask these questions. We don't want to ask very close-ended questions that are just yes or no. We want to pull information out of someone. That's why I put right here, we want to pull information out of someone. And that sometimes it can feel awkward, sometimes it can feel resistance, and that's where the deals are made. And I'll get into more on that here in a minute. So don't ask yes or no questions. Every question or statement you make needs to evoke a long-winded response from the other person. It's the same thing when you're pre-qualifying that couch that you want to buy on Facebook Marketplace. It comes down to, well, hey, how long have you guys owned it? Do you guys own pets? All the stuff that goes into that. When you're buying a house, it's way more emotional. So we want to ask open-ended questions that evoke a long-winded response from somebody. When I'll get into them, I'll dive into it here in a second. But such as when somebody says, the bathroom has never been updated, you say, oh, how long have you owned the property? Because, it hasn't ever been touched since you've owned the property. And they say, oh, well, it's been 25 years. You say, oh man, that's not a problem. But do you have any idea how much money it takes to bring something like that up to today's standards? That's what I mean by pre-qualifying. You got to take it a step or 2 or 10 further in order to actually really, really bring it down to a level that's understood. Some of the best deals you have aren't really going to be that friction based. You just need to pre-qualify them and set the stage and just do your job. So let's dive into setting the stage and being confident on how to dive into these questions and these levels of motivation and all the things you need to extract from the person on the other end of the phone. So setting the stage. No matter if you're just making initial contact with the person that's the owner of the property, or if you're standing in front of them and you're in their front door of their house and you've been talking to them for months and you're trying to get this deal worked out and you're still trying to pre-qualify it because you just don't have all of the information you need as an investor to make a logical offer or decision on what to do. And a lot of times the sellers have no expectation. They have no idea how this process works. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea what you even need to look at on the appointment if that's what you're doing. You need to set the stage and slow that whole entire thing down. That's where the money is made. I cannot believe how many times I walk a property with very experienced investors. Some of the big heavy hitters here in town, we walk through in properties all the time. And granted, they're not the one running the show because it's our appointment, but they just treat it like it's another property. They don't get to know anybody. They don't care about the process of what we've gone through to get to that point. They just want to run their numbers. But what you need to do as being in control of that appointment, and most of the time in a wholesale position where you're wholesaling a property and you're trying to build better rapport because you get a deeper discount on a deal. That's where this all comes from. You're trying to pre-qualify better and spend more time and more effort and get better deals. I know people who only do 10 deals a year and they make 10, 30, $50,000 per deal because they spend time on these deals. It's not a numbers game to them. They go after very targeted lists. They go after very targeted leads and they spend a lot of time building relationships, and you get really good deals off pre-qualifying whatever that is for that deal in that moment. So it's really with pre-qualification leads is a short process. Honestly, it's really short and simple. We use phrases such as this sometimes in order to even see if they want to chat about their situation, right? So let's say you just made a call. They say, hey, yeah, I own the property. What's going on? And you say, hey, I'm looking at buying the property. You ever thought about selling it? And they say, yes, I've thought about it. And then what you need to do is immediately go into pre-qual mode, right? And I just say, hey, great, cool. If you have 5 or 10 minutes or so, I'd love to ask you a couple of questions to see if this would even be a good fit. What does that do? Right then and there, you're setting the stage, the expectation that I need 5 to 10 minutes of your time. And if they don't have it, they're going to tell you. I promise. I've been in that situation countless times. They say, well, I just don't have that time right now. Call me back another time. Not a big deal. Just set the follow-up, give them a call. But what that does is you say, hey, I have 5 or 10 minutes, or I need 5 or 10 minutes. I'd love to ask you a couple questions. So they're expecting questions. They're going to come up with answers. They're going to talk about something they already know a lot about, which is a property they own. And a lot of people love that. You start with that because people love to talk about what they know, right? It boosts our ego. It releases serotonin, releases all kind of good things when you start talking about stuff that you know. It's incredible. So you just ask that question and see if this would even be a good fit. That's a huge way to end a question, right? Because you're already saying flat out, I don't know. Cool, you want to sell? That's great. I don't know if this even works for me. We got to figure that out together, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. We got to figure that out. We don't know if this is going to work. So then another version of that question, hey, if you have a couple of minutes, I'd like to ask you a few questions about the property. What kind of condition is this? Yada, yada, yada. It could be short and simple. I really like this first version because it's very direct. The one that says, if you have 5 or 10 minutes or so, I would love to ask you a couple questions about the property to see if this would even be a good fit. You could ask that on an appointment. You could ask that on a cold call. You could ask that on somebody who reaches out to you on your website who you already know is this insanely hot lead. You still want to slow it down. You want to slow it down and you want to ask them the good questions. You want to set the stage so they know what to expect. Like I said, don't ever forget, most of these people have no idea how this process works selling a property to an investor. They have no idea how the process works. Everybody is conditioned to think I'm supposed to call my realtor, I'm supposed to do this. I don't know how this process works. It's your job as an investor, a relationship cultivator, so to speak, and wholesaler is where relationships come in. You got to build that relationship better and you got to slow it down and you got to set the expectations and be methodical about your intentions. And they respect it. I'm telling you, people respect people who slow things down and explain what's going to happen, because a lot of times they're not comfortable enough to be like, well, I don't know. They don't say that. They just sit back and are reactive to what's going on. That's just how people operate. So, I like that. I like this first version of that question a little bit better. If you have 5 or 10 minutes, it's just more direct and explains what's going on, but it doesn't always work with certain people. Certain people who I could tell I need to leave this open-ended because they might think I need 2 minutes when really I need 10. And I really just going to start getting them talking and I'm going to end up at 10 minutes anyways. It's very instinctual and it comes with practice, and don't trip over it if you haven't experienced that yet, but it comes with practice. And so it leads you into the first prequal question that we want to dive as deep as humanly possible into, which is condition of the property. And here's a huge tip. If you have to write out your own style of communication, your own verbiage, because there's so many scripts out there, there's so many different things that people try to go on the script and off the script, and they try to do all these things, and they try to be somebody else. Right. And that was something I struggled with. And I want to put that message out to people watching this and people trying to better pre-qualify leads, go on better appointments, stop wasting effort, and all that jazz that comes into this. Is write it out in your own verbiage, and don't be afraid to use it, and don't be afraid to go on a script and then just literally forget about the script to try to build better rapport. I don't go on script anymore at all. It's all my own script that just comes out of my head. But it's one of those things, just starting out, you feel like you need a starting spot. You need a place to start, and you need a script. And I suggest getting a script and writing it out, just like I said on here. Hey, if you have 5 or 10 minutes of your time, I'd love to ask you a couple questions about the property just to see if this is a good fit. If you never use the word love, or you never say a word that's in this example, then change it. That's what I mean by that. Don't be so awkward and not using your own style of communication. Every single person on this planet is different and communicates differently. It's part of what makes it beautiful. So let's dive into what I mean by that. Our 4 levels of pre-qualification. Condition of the property. Number 1, we're going to dive so deep into that. Stay with me here. And timeline to sell, the motivation, which is insanely how we position these questions in this order, 1, 2, 3, 4, insanely intentional, because when somebody starts talking about the condition of the property, the timeline, the motivation is going to come out somewhere in those 2 questions. I promise you, majority of the time. And if it doesn't, just ask. I'll dive deep into that here in a second. And then most of all, number 4 is the price. We end it on the price. We do not want to start with the price. We want to end it there. And I'll explain how this funnel works and how they pre-qualify themselves and how sexy it is and how you're going to be going on so much better appointments. In 2019, I think we put one out of 17 properties we put under contract. In 2020 was 1 in 6. So that's all from pre-qualifying, focusing on exactly what I'm talking about right now. So here's the tip. Just remember, every single person or seller you speak with you need to answer some very simple questions in order to do the deal. If the person on the other end of the phone isn't willing to even talk to you in that regard, it was never a deal. Even if they say, yeah, I need to sell it, the house is screwed, it's falling over, it was never a deal if they're not willing to talk to you, right? So it's your job to get them to talk to you. So this is a huge tip. I always say, if you even have to have a piece of paper just like this right here, 1, 2, 3, 4 written out, and I do this, I used to do this, and have 4 lines, and then have the questions written out on here that, if I put a check next to it while I'm talking to Mr. Rogers on the phone on 123 Candy Lane, and I got the condition question out of the way, but I got a little lost because I've only done a couple of these calls, have the number 2 written out saying, hey, I need to know the timeline. Number 3 is the motivation. Number 4 is the price of the property. What does he want for it? So if at any point you get lost and overwhelmed, you have it right there next to you. It's really cool. It's really simple. Just if it's on a whiteboard, you can do that. You can have a whiteboard there. You see a whiteboard here. Oh, sorry. You can see a whiteboard here in my background. I use whiteboards for everything. I love whiteboards, but that's just a little tip that I threw in here because it's something I used to do. It's very action oriented and it's very, very easy and simple to remember. And you can get lost. I promise. If you're talking to some of these people for 20, 30, 40 minutes, and you're going to get so caught up in their circumstance and what's going on, and so much stuff that's not about the house, which is amazing. That's where good deals happen. Don't trip over that long phone call, and you feel like you messed it up. Guess what? They don't know you messed it up. It's okay. They have no idea that you had a 4-part questionnaire that you were trying to get filled out. They don't know that. You just built a good relationship. Who cares? Move on. So let's go and dive. Number 1, I would argue condition of the property, that this is the absolute most important question to dive as deep into as you can. That is for so many reasons. Let's dive into it. You asked this first for a reason. For one, it gets them talking about something they know an absolute boatload about, right? They know a ton of stuff about the property. It's something that's common ground, and it's not uncomfortable to talk about. They're going to volunteer information you need to know already. If they tell you the bathroom is outdated, the kitchen needs updating, the floors aren't bad, there's drywall repair that's needed, the roof's 25 years old, you start to you ask them follow-up questions, all that stuff. So like, oh, how expensive, hey, do you have any idea how much that costs? I usually spend $3,000 to $5,000 per bathroom that's over 20 years old. Does that sound like something you've ever heard of before? And just be light about it. Don't tell them what something costs. Just be light about it. Leave it all open-ended. And you just do that with every single thing they say about the condition of the property. If they say, hey, the roof needs to be replaced, you say, oh, well, hey, isn't it about 1,000 square foot house? Is there anything special about the roof I need to know? Are the gutters still in decent shape? Are the downspouts, do they run through the yard? How does that look? It's all stuff. And some people aren't going to want to talk about all that stuff, and that's totally fine. It's okay. You'll figure all that stuff out on the actual appointment. That's totally fine. But what we want to do here is keep the conversation going as long as possible. And we're getting them to open up about all of the things that need to be fixed or repaired on a property. And you also want to try to get money, dollar amounts out of them as well on what those repairs are. Because if everybody knows this house is worth $100,000 and they just told you everything about the property that needs to be repaired, guess what? They've just backed themselves into an understanding mutually with you, subliminally, subconsciously, whatever you want to call it, that they now know I have to spend $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 to fix this property up to get it to be worth $100,000. And then you say they know you have to make a profit. They understand that. Some of the best deals that I've ever done come from people who literally said, I don't care if you can solve this problem. I would be happy to just take whatever you can pay me for the house. That's amazing. It's just amazing how some people operate. So it's your job to get all that information out in the open, get a mutual subliminal understanding of what repairs and stuff have to happen. And you want to just keep diving deep into it and keep asking follow-up questions and keep doing it and if it gets kind of weird, just move on to the next one and say, well, hey, if you guys are willing to do business, how quickly are you looking to do something done? So that's going to dive us into the next one, which is the timeline to make a decision. You want to just smoothly roll into it. And a lot of times when you start just running through all these scenarios, the condition of the property, how long have you been dealing with this? How long have you thought about selling? What condition is the outside of the house in? It's all brick? How old are the windows? All this stuff. And you just go through this whole list of questionnaires on stuff you need to know to do the deal. They're usually going to tell you the timeline. It's all going to start coming out, and you're already going to hear it come out of their voice. So that's why we leave this in second place. It's your second pre-qualification level of motivation, because a lot of times it will come out. It just is smooth in conversation. So after you've dove deep into the condition of the property and built some rapport, the likelihood for someone to open up about their real actual needs and their realistic goals multiplies, right? So timeline is a broad term. This is a huge heavy hitter closer tip. This is something that took me a long time to really, and I still practice this in communication with sellers to this day. We always want to get specific as we possibly can with this question. A lot of people who sell a house for a discount are natural. They're in the situation for a reason that they don't want to be in, because they're natural, gigantic procrastinators, right? They don't put timelines on their goals in life or in general, right? They just say, yeah, it's something I need to deal with. So your job at that point is to 1000% put a realistic calendar-driven action on that entire process and say, hey, well, if we can get this done in 2 or 3 weeks, how does that look for you? Because that's how quickly we typically close on properties that are in as-is condition when we buy them off market, we pay cash for them, all that jazz. It's a concierge service is what I always say to sellers. And that way that gets them thinking about, I need to do something about this. I have an opportunity in front of me and it's very good. And I need to act on this, but people still don't operate. It's too broad of a term. So we want to condense the timeline. I'm huge on condensing timelines. When somebody says, hey, give me a call in another couple months, I say, well, hey, okay, cool. What if I give you a call about 3 weeks? We'll just check in. You're already condensing the timeline, and they're already coming to terms with making a decision faster. That's what people need to start doing in this business. That's what investors do. The good investors, the good closers, they all condense timelines insanely strong. It's just something that it takes practice, and it gets better and better with practice. The more people you talk to, the more deals you do. So it's just an imperative you condense emotions down to a realistic statement and set the stage with them following up. So they know you're ready to make a decision now. And if they're not, that's fine. I'm going to move on to go find somebody else who honestly is ready to make a decision. It's reluctancy. It's insanely powerful. You do not need that. They need you way more than you need them. I promise you. So motivation is quite possibly the most overused word in real estate investing. But honestly, you have to know what their motivation is. So it's just funny. We need to know, right? So, why would someone ever sell a property at a 20, 30, 60% or more discount of its value, right? There's a pain point. There's pain, or there's many points of pain going on that's motivating them. So the reason you open up with the other two levels of questioning on the condition of the property and the timeline is common ground, like I said, is because they need to sell. A lot of times they need to sell. They're already going to tell you what's motivating them, right? The condition of the property is going to be motivating most of the time. If there's back taxes, if there's people that aren't on board in the family, if there's other decision makers, if there's deceased individuals, if it's inherited, if there's back payments of a mortgage going on, all kinds of stuff. There's so many reasons why somebody sells at a discount on a fast timeline, because they're natural procrastinators. Their motivation to do business and sell a property at a discount to a cash buyer investor like yourself is insanely high when you pre-qualify people and just get them to go down this funnel of understanding. So when they tell you all that stuff, that the condition of the property is here, you got a new lead up here, and the condition of the property, they've already started telling you why they're going to do business with you. Their timeline is, would it be great if you can meet it quicker? You're going down the funnel more, and then the motivation comes out, and then all of a sudden the price is at the bottom. We'll get here in a second. But like I said, with condition of the property, it's just insane how powerful that entire thing is. And that's why I say to deep dive that as insanely deep as you can. I've talked to sellers for over an hour before just about a house. And yes, does it get off topic? Does it go back to other stuff that's going on, people in their family that they hate? Like it gets super off topic, and that's okay. You're just there to listen. You're almost a counselor. And so that's why you have that piece of paper next to you with the 4 levels of stuff on it, and the motivation and all the stuff that you need to know as an investor to make this transaction work. They want to do business. I promise. These people want to do business, and you just have to let them know that there are things that you need to know in order for this deal to get done. They will respect it. So pro tip, try to disqualify yourself by asking why. Oh my gosh, so many other. I have to make a whole nother video on disqualifying yourself. I'll touch on it here shortly though. So disqualify yourself by asking why they don't list the property with an agent, or they don't just fix it up themselves. Now, you might feel like you're trying to hide that because anybody on the planet, people aren't that stupid. They might act stupid, but they're not that stupid. They know there's other options out there. Usually selling to an investor is not the first choice a lot of people think to do. They've done it based on need, right? So when you buy properties at discounts, here's a pro tip: because disqualifying yourself actually puts you in a better position to get the deal done. Because I can't tell you how many people we ask, why don't you just list this? Why don't you just fix it up yourself? And they actually, some of the best deals can't spit it out of their mouths fast enough why they don't want to do that, unless you already know why they don't want to do that. If somebody's in probate or something like that and they can't make a profit on a property because they got a weird divorce decree written, you're not going to be able to. They can't even sell the property unless it's as is condition anyways. I mean, there's one of 1,000 reasons why you'd be talking to somebody in that situation and have massive value to their life. So they're going to tell you exactly why they don't want to do X, Y, and Z, or they don't want to fix it up themselves. And if it still is unclear, just ask. Why? Why do you want to sell this property? Why do you see us doing business together? Those questions are insanely powerful because you just have to know. The most awkward thing you can do is walk a property and somebody says, well, I don't need to sell this to you. I don't even really know why you guys are here. And that's happened to me. That happens to people just starting out. That's called earning your stripes. And what we want to do with pre-qualifying and do on this video and this training is to teach people to not be in those awkward situations and not go on these pointless appointments. We want to pre-qualify. We want to work on deals that are actually deals. So number 4, the price. Everybody feels like this is the most important thing. This is arguably the most important part of the entire deal is what would you sell the property for question, right? We deflect from this until the end on purpose because like I said, we got this funnel that we go down where this is a brand new lead that we don't know is going to work at all. We tell them that. We say, hey, we don't know if this is even going to work. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? They say, yes. Okay, cool. We go here. Then we get them talking about the pre-qualifying question number 1, condition of the property. They start talking about all this stuff and they start qualifying themselves more and more. You already know it needs work. You've seen it. You've looked it up online. You know the distress in some level that's going on. And then you go down it further and you say, if you guys are looking to sell in 2 months, how does that picture look for you? If we can, come to an agreement that makes sense for both of us, you go down this funnel. It's insanely awesome. And some of the best deals I've done, understand it's not about the price. So some of the best deals, this conversation didn't even happen this way. So that's why we leave it until the end, and you get them to pre-qualify themselves and tell you try to disqualify yourself and have them tell you why they want to do business with you. So it's just insanely powerful. You just got to throw this in at the end. It is arguably the most important question, but you don't want it to feel like the most important question. You want it to be, okay, cool, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Now that I know all of that stuff and we've spent some time talking, obviously this sounds like a great fit. I'd love to make an offer, buy the property from you. But I mean, what were you realistically thinking after all the stuff we just discussed? Selling to a cash investor, a cash buyer investor like myself, who has to make a profit, feed my family at the end of the day. What does that price look like for you? That's all you got to do. Simple. That's all you got to do. So what that does is, if someone has told you the property needs $20,000 in repairs, this is an example I'm running through, and it's worth around 100 fixed up, and they know you need to make a profit, they know what to expect. They say, okay, well, he's probably going to be, $50,000 to $60,000 offer on this property is what I would assume. Assuming you guys agree on repair costs. You have that conversation later after you've run your numbers, you've looked at the property. It's all still pre-qualifying. You never stop pre-qualifying or disqualifying yourself in a deal. It never stops. So we reverse engineer asking prices from the entire previous, like I just explained, how we go through the whole thing, and the entire previous questions are pre-qualifying. And when executed correctly, the price range you offer can't be argued. They can't argue it. They understand. You've got them to admit openly, and they've treated themselves they've pre-qualified themselves and gone down this amazing funnel to get to making the most sense for both parties. It's magical. It really is. And I'm going to touch a little bit on disqualifying so you can understand where I'm going with this. So don't be afraid to disqualify yourself like we spoke about earlier. If you feel like you're potentially throwing away a deal, I promise you there was never a deal to begin with you. And I can't even begin to say how powerful that is, because if you say, hey, well, why don't you list this with a realtor? And they say, well, you're right, I probably am. I'm going to call them after I talk to you. There was never a deal there for you as an investor. And if you're just going to go walk that property and do all this stuff and not ask those questions and not be of value to somebody, they're going to do it anyways. And you just wasted time and resources and calling your whole team. So there's a reason why somebody's going to do business with you, and you got to figure out what their motivation is and why they're willing to do business with you. So this is a skill, I promise you, that can be learned with practice. It's something that if the conditions, you're not going to get it right the first time. If the condition of the property is insanely strong and there's only $5,000-$6,000 little minor stuff that needs to be done, and it's in a good neighborhood and a good school district, and you don't ask the question, well, why don't you list this with a realtor? Why would you sell it to me as an investor knowing I got to buy it at a discount? And ask that question, and you're going to go walk a bunch of properties, because who doesn't want an offer on their property that could potentially make money? If somebody called me right now in this house I'm sitting in right now and said, hey, what would you take for that house? I'd say, I don't know. What are you willing to pay? And we would start going down the funnel. That's how it works, and somebody who's good at their job on the other end of the phone talking to me would ask all the same questions, but I would get down to the point where it wouldn't make sense. I would say, no, everything's been fixed. I don't need to sell. There's no motivation here. There's no pain. I don't need to sell. Perfect. They're not going to come look at my house. That's okay. So it's just one of those things that it's pre-qualification, and nobody gets it right the first time. It's something that takes practice. And the beauty is the seller doesn't have a clue. You missed a part of your script. They have no idea. If you just keep rolling with the punches, so to speak, and being a person of value and telling them, I want the best possible outcome for you, you are their advocate. You are their friend. You are going to get more deals from just acting like that. You're going to get referrals. I have bought and sold houses from people from appointments that I never bought their house. They've given me referral business because I literally said, why would you do business with me when I think there's better options out there? I'm not sitting here trying to shark a property from somebody. We're trying to be the most valuable person we can be to them on the other side of the table, and they love it. It's great. So I hope this clears up pre-qualifying. This is just touching on minor topics. Don't forget the pre-qualification questions, motivation levels. Number 1, condition of the property, timeline, motivation, and the price. You can't, and if you have to write them out next to you, and even just 4 little lines and write condition of the property, timeline to sell, motivation, pain point in parentheses, and then write what do they want, price for the property. That is all you have to do when you're talking to sellers, and just be more diligent, be more purposeful, be more intentional about your appointments, and pre-qualify every single appointment you do. And I can't tell you how powerful this stuff is. It will take your efforts and multiply them, because you don't have to be wasting effort here. You won't be going and looking at properties here that were never deals. It's insanely powerful. Like I said, 2019, it was 1 in 17. In 2020, it was 1 in 6 properties I walked, we put under contract. So you tell me how powerful that is. So until next time, see you.